Mr. Ukip, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you, Madam President. Having been to the camps along the northern coast of the Schengen area, I can tell you it's a bonanza for criminal gangs and terrorists. In Dieppe, I even saw port security letting Albanian people traffickers climb fences into the port. And it was I that was threatened when I asked him to stop this happening. Not one penny of British taxpayers' money should go into this disastrous EU migration policy. And if you want to control migration, if you want to stop deaths in the Mediterranean, then we need to be turning boats back. Britain has a new problem this summer. We have our own invasion of migrants to the south coast. And the EU has tried to hide its plans for a common EU Coast Guard and border force by holding the debate in the first plenary session after the UK referendum. Now I ask myself, why would they want to do that? Is it because they know the British people would recoil at the EU controlling territorial waters without having to even ask permission from the government? I hope people who are undecided about how to vote in the UK referendum listen to what the EU are planning. That immigration policy is decided at EU level and they're asking for 50 billion to fund it. Just yet another reason for the people of Great Britain to vote to leave.
Mr. Ukip, there is a blue card for you from Mr. Bogovic.
Well, for a number of years we have seen pressure in terms of immigrants from Africa and elsewhere. Now we hope that the UK, after the 23rd of June, will make sure that they will not be one of the states that in fact want to participate in the solution of that. If you don't want to participate, do you think that it will be solving itself, this problem, without any contribution?
Mr. Ukip.
Well, can I correct you? It's the 23rd of June, 25th, and you'll have missed it. I hope that when we leave the European Union will sort this problem. We, as an island nation, will sort our own problem and sort our own borders.
Next speaker, Mr. Pretzel.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Mogherini would like to solve a global problem. But don't be ridiculous. You can't even resolve the situation in Europe. The CSU came up with a slogan: we will have to give up our welfare, send it to Africa and Asia. €500 million, €1 billion, okay, up to €62 billion if we have private investments sending money to Africa as well. It's the same thing as we had in the Juncker plan. This time it won't work either. It really won't work, because the investment possibilities in Africa are worse than they are in the EU.
Well, Mr. Etheridge has a blue card for you. Do you take it or not? Yes, finally. Mr. Etheridge, you have the floor. 30 seconds.
Yeah, and thank you, sir, for having the courage of your convictions to answer a question. I wish everyone had the same courage. Do you think that the EU public will be joyfully celebrating the calls for global wealth redistribution on a scale that Karl Marx would have had his eyes watering at, that we've heard in this chamber? Or do you think perhaps the taxpayers of the EU might think perhaps we'd like to keep some of that money for ourselves, have it spent in our own countries? Do you think they share the zeal of some of our colleagues for throwing money elsewhere rather than in their home countries?
Colleague, fortunately in your country you're allowed to decide on your membership of the EU, to say no, and Franz Josef Strauss, I think, would turn in his grave if his colleagues, Mr. Weber, had acted the same way. Sending wealth, well, we understand this as a green communist idea, but it's nothing that a so-called conservative power in Bavaria should be doing. So, all the best with you on the 23rd of June.